So welcome to Rebuild Illinois' Townhall number 22. It is March 6th, 2022. Some of the topics we're going to be going over today are we're going to talk about some endorsements that have happened recently in the within the GOP, I guess you might say, or at least within the governor's race. And we have some news about what's going on with the U.S. version of the truckers convoy. And then on top of that, we're going to get into part 8 of our 10-part series about election education. And Ben's going to lay out some details about political campaign structure. I'm actually going to be a student with you on this one, so please make sure to stick around. We're about 1 minute from the start.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Rebuild Illinois, where we get to talk about how we, the people, take charge and make Illinois a great place to live again.
Hey, Ben, welcome to the show, man. How's things going on your side of the state?
Hey, going pretty good, actually. Yeah.
I count you as Southern Illinois.
Southern being south of Chicago, that's Southern Illinois.
It is. Us Chicagoans are such snobs. So, but I am a downstater.
Just to let everybody know, it's just going to be us guys tonight. You know, Teresa's feeling a little bit under the weather. You know how women are; they get the sniffles and they go cry to their mommy.
We will lack the feminine touch. This place will be ill-decorated, and we'll probably end up cursing.
Yep.
So I think that's what that means. So tonight Ben's really going to hold the helm. Hopefully, maybe we'll get this under an hour tonight, Ben.
I think
maybe
so.
We'll just run long and drink all the beer we have in the mini fridge.
Maybe.
So
either proposition is good.
I'll take either.
Either short or we drink all the beer. One of those.
Either way, the beer's getting drinking. It's whether we do it with you or with everyone else. But I wanted to take some time, kind of tell everybody what's going on as far as the Freedom Convoy. Obviously, the U.S. version. We have. I think we've already played our part. Illinois is out of it. Today they entered into the Beltway around D.C. So today was like the final arrival day. Actually, it was last night. I think they all rallied. So I want to give you kind of a quick view as to where they were rallying, what we know about it. I don't have a ton of details, but I thought I'd just try and get some of it all in one spot, maybe get some comments from you guys, see what you think about it. But currently... this is, I'm going to share my screen real quick. It seems that Hagerstown, as you can see, is just northwest. I think it's like right up here. This is Hagerstown. Okay, they are just northwest off of Highway 70, and they come in via 270, and then I guess they do a lap around Washington. I think they're treating it like Jericho. Maybe the walls will come down, but I think what we have seen today is, or that we have evidence that they're all parked well outside of DC. I think it's probably a safe move. They're not doing what's happened in Canada, which was that parking downtown. I don't think DC's built for it. I mean, they've already got.
No,
it seems like they were, and they were kind of prepping for it too. They don't know what's going to happen. I don't think anyone really has had a lot of detail on how this was going to play out.
And as I mentioned in the pre-show run-up is it's not like they can surround the Capitol building and the other buildings there anyway because of national security restrictions. You can't really have big trucks down in that area to begin with. So they're kind of limited to how close they can actually get to the seat of government.
Well, and some. This is a little bit of video that we were able to pull of them pulling out of Hagertown. Obviously, a little congested as they were leaving that smaller area. But really, we've only got like one or two reporters that we're able to really follow. I don't have anybody on the ground like we did when we were covering stuff for PNN with what was going on in Canada. But we do have a guy who was reporting about how they're basically just circling the Beltway, and has some footage that I think should be what's playing now. Actually, I think this is the footage here. Let me go ahead and run that. No, that's the arrival. I think this is the one where, yeah, this is them driving around the Beltway. So he's saying he's on the inner loop here. I'll bring his audio up real quick.
Coming around the Beltway right now. So I'm on the inner loop. They're on the outer loop. We're right by the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. So they keep taping it for you so you can see how long it is. Looks like they're in the middle lane.
So this happened today.
I was trying to catch them on the Woodrow Wilson Bridge because that's actually a spot where you can see the Washington Monument, because they're in Washington, D.C. after all, but they're on the Beltway. But on the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, you can actually see the monument. So you can see down here, there's a good long line of them. So you got the truckers kind of mixed in the middle lane here coming through.
Looks like they're moving normal speed with traffic too.
Yeah, I'll be able to catch a tail end of them on the Woodrow Wilson Bridge.
A little bit later.
Bridge.
I'll go ahead and mute his audio, but I believe that the reason that they're moving normal speed is because I think it's hard on their brake systems for them to do the crawl. You know, they don't necessarily benefit from doing like 5 miles an hour around the Beltway. So, but yeah, this is what the scene looks like. It's just it's kind of sparse. I think they're just kind of lapping it here and there. I don't know if you had any input on that at all, Ben, or if you had any ideas on. Like I said, this is all we know.
No.
That they're outside and
I think you know, like you said earlier, they're driving much faster. It is a Sunday, which tends to be a slower day in traffic around that area, so that at least is a little bit nice just for them. But
it doesn't look like they're really stopping anything, which I don't know if it's good or bad, honestly. I don't know how I feel about that. I've heard a lot of people say, well, that's kind of stupid for them to go out to Washington. They should go to the southern border, all this other stuff. There's a good number of them.
I would expect that they're going to continue, and come tomorrow, traffic will be at a standstill once they get on to 495. And like I said, especially if they run straight up 55, which cuts through DC, they will essentially, it'll be so much traffic, nobody will be able to move. And
right.
That's going to have the impact that they are looking for.
Yeah, I don't know if is 495 a tollway. Patriotic Mouse asks if they've been stopping at tolls along the way. I know they had to do on the way there, that's for sure. But I don't know if the Beltway is I don't think it's a tollway, is it, Ben?
Yeah, I'm stretching my memory on that. The tollway, 495 itself, which is the loop, is not a tollway. Okay,
so that's probably why that's part of the plan as well.
Right, but
not to mention, I've gotten
from west to east. They did definitely hit some tollways that they had to go through and pay their tolls to get through.
Right,
just like everybody else.
But that's a good question. I will find out more details. Hopefully, we get somebody on the ground there that can report back, let us know what's going on. But as far as the Freedom Convoy goes, we do have some interesting aerial footage that happened. I think this was all as they were queuing up out at a rest stop just before last night. This is not from today. I'm kind of curious. It's like just the beginning of the game there. All they've done is arrive last night. I think they did a couple of laps around, and they're going to be going back outside of Washington. I don't think there's a lot of people going into Washington at this point. So stay tuned. We will keep you guys up to date on what we find out. But it looks like they crossed Illinois without any incident. The Illinois State Police didn't get to do any fishing from what we could tell. So that was good.
And by the way, it's not a surprise that they're staying outside of 495 because there's really no infrastructure inside of 495 to be able to handle that. You got to think of Washington as really an area where most people come to work, or they're coming there to conduct business, but there's not like rest stops or
Right.
fast
Right.
open areas that
And
they
not to
can
mention,
park in or
have you
anything like
have you
that.
ever driven into DC and gotten a piece of mail when you got home? I have.
I have not.
They have like one of the most egregious um, uh, camera ticketing systems I have ever seen in my entire life. So it's not real
Maybe
friendly.
maybe I escaped it before they started doing that.
Yeah, it's not a real friendly place to be driving around touring because you will come back with paperwork. But yeah, not a ton to report, but I wanted to give you the information that we had on that story. In other news that has happened, I think we only have like 2 stories we wanted to update you on before we got into the meat of what we're going to cover today, because you're going to be covering what's the topic? You want to give it a little teaser real quick?
Okay, well, so we have an update with the governor's races, and there's not a huge amount of new news. Nobody else has entered the race.
Everyone's
Thankfully.
gathering signatures up, getting ready to go to Springfield tomorrow. That's the
Right.
real news, right?
Right. Tomorrow is the first day of turn-in. In fact, I have a politician stopping by here during the show.
Awesome.
to pick
Have them jump in and say hi. Might be our first interview officially.
No, she's just driving through to pick up those and keep going. In fact, they're already up at the end of the driveway waiting
Yeah.
for her.
Yeah.
I've
I've been there, standing outside in Springfield. They're all heading to
I
Springfield
did give
right now.
her business cards to hand out to other candidates for interviews. So, folks,
Good.
what we plan on doing, we're going to be able to start doing here soon as these candidates file. We finally find out who they are, and we can contact them and arrange an interview with them. And it's that format, by the way, is going to be fairly, it's not meant to be very confrontational. It's meant to be more informational in nature. So, and we're asking them all the same questions, essentially.
And we are still in the process of like trying to collect questions from you when we can. We do have a form that I'll make sure to post later on in the show. I want to save that to the end because Facebook hates when we post links that go outside of Facebook. It kind of, for some reason, makes us the enemy of said social network when we tell people to go elsewhere. So we're going to do what we can to play nice in that arena. But as far as how things are heating up, I had heard last week, I think, on the show that people had seen, and I have not seen them myself, and we scoured looking for some, but had seen that there was a little bit of mudslinging already starting on little pre-primary GOP mudslinging and coming from the Irving camp. Now, I have not seen it myself. I'm looking for it. If you guys have a link.
I have a website tubed up, actually, that has a lot of these ads that went out. And
do you?
I can go ahead and pull that up right now. Let me add it to the screen here.
Okay.
And you see here is this is the Illinois.com.
Okay.
And as you see here, first, 2 bits of information. First, as you see there, Darren Bailey is actually leading the pack right now in the race toward the primary. He has 25%. It says here, in a statewide internal poll shared with the Illinois on the condition the full poll not be released publicly, Bailey leads the field with around 25% of the vote, more than 10 percentage points over the nearest competitor. So he's got a very big lead at this point. Now, it's important to say we have 3.5 months before the primaries. So there's a lot that can happen between then and now. But as of right now, the way it stands, Bailey has the dominant lead in the pack. And
did you have any of that information on the kind of the mudslinger stuffs?
Yeah, all this down here.
Ooh, interesting.
Same website. And and so I think we reported before that Urban is receiving funding from an
Hit
Illinois
Hit
billionaire.
Control Plus on your keyboard. I want to zoom that in and get a better view on what's in that browser page. Control Plus, and just to zoom in. I think you have to be on that web page too.
Yeah.
Yep. Click on it, hit Control Plus, and I kind of want to read some of these. A little more. Go. There we go. It'll reformat. So they're trying to align him as an Obama supporter.
Yeah, well, essentially some of that. They're also going after him for saying that he's supporting, that he received a lot of COVID relief funds.
Yeah, I mean,
etc.
As someone who actually has served in this Illinois Senate,
and using his campaign.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
well, his family owns a business as well, and so COVID relief funds were there available for businesses.
Right.
Whether or not he used that money, I'm sure if he received it, he used it according to the requirements of that fund. But as you see there, though, Irvin is really going after Bailey. And
do we know this is Irvin's site?
These are from the Urban campaign.
Oh, gotcha. The Illinois.com. Kind of an odd spelling there.
Paid for by Irvin for Illinois. That's what it says on it.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that came from the Urban campaign. So when you see that, that's what it means is that was the Urban campaign. And of course, you have to look at small print on these images, but that's what's there. So, but the point is not necessarily what they're saying, but it's the tactic that's being used. And there are pluses and minuses. Well, first of all, why do politicians use attack ads in the first place? Or you can call them attack ads, or you can call them negative campaign ads. When a candidate, especially when they're behind, they have to think about how they can shrink that lead, and there are only two ways to do that.
Right.
Either you boost your own support,
mm-hmm.
or you reduce your opponent's support. And so what happens is negative campaign ads or attack ads are designed to reduce your opponent's support. So these ads aren't really geared toward people who might support Urban. They're geared toward people who might support Bailey. And that's the tactic behind it. So Urban doesn't plan on winning votes with these. He plans on killing votes for Bailey, maybe getting those people to stay home during the primaries.
Gotcha.
So that's the idea behind it. Then positive ads are designed to gain you support. And typically speaking, you don't necessarily win voters over from one camp to another by that combination. Running negative campaign ads might get people to stay home, but there's no data that suggests that those people will now support you in a vote.
So this article is March 1st, and it's talking about Irving
mm-hmm.
ramping up his attack towards Bailey around March 1st. Now, was it 2 days ago that he got an endorsement? I'm trying to remember what day this happened. I know I watched it live. I don't think it was 2 days ago. Yeah.
It was a couple days ago. It was certainly this week that Bailey did receive a very significant endorsement for governor. Yes. And that's possibly, these ads, of course, have been running for a little bit before that, but
yep. This is the story right here.
May go into why Irvin feels he needs to run these negative ads is because he is facing a deficit, and he is facing a situation where a lot of organic support in the Republican Party is starting to go toward Bailey. And that is partially because, well, why don't we play the videos on the
Yeah, why don't we
support
show?
that
So
Bailey
we
got?
had this video showed up 2 days ago on Facebook. Literally, I was lucky. I actually caught it live, Ben, and I'm watching this, and let me just say that some of the things that I saw live, I was like, oh man, I got to go make clips because it was so jam packed with info. So I think it's like an hour long endorsement. There's a couple of speakers. I think he had his lieutenant governor stand up and speak as well. But let me just, there were some real key things said, and I think they were in response to what you just gave us a little taste of. So let me play the first clip here.
Career Democrats like Richard Irvin and trust fund billionaires like J.B. Pritzker can waste their money because it's not going to make the difference. What's going to make the difference are people just like you showing up, getting involved, and winning in November.
You heard he called him? Did you hear that? I don't know if you heard that. I'm going to play it again real quick for you. Just the first couple of seconds. See if you caught that.
Career Democrats like Richard Irvin and trust.
Richard Irving's a what? A career Democrat.
Yeah, that didn't play the first time. So yeah,
that kind of gets in the teeth a little bit.
So
that was
Irvin
the opener.
has kind of dug himself a bit of a hole.
A little bit.
And let me comment on that real quick. So Irvin, and there's another article that talks about Irvin and his voting habits. Now, Irvin has run as a Republican since 2005, but he voted in the Democrat primaries in 3 of the last 4 primary elections. And for a lot of people, that raises some very interesting questions. And it leads into the comment that you heard from the gentleman right there. Is this guy really a Republican?
Right. And so as this was going, I can get you actually. I want to bring right up to the meat. This is Jeannie Ives' actual, like, I think she endorses him like 2 different times. Once she endorses him, and then she goes into some meat and potatoes. That's a little bit longer of a clip, but here's the actual clip.
I know the Republican candidates running for governor. There are good men running for this office on the Republican side. But when leadership was demanded against a one-man government in Pritzker, there was only a one-man response in Darren Bailey. For his courage and experience, I wholeheartedly endorse Darren Bailey for governor.
Pretty interesting. So the fact that we've got that out there now, and if you don't know who Jeannie Ives is, Ben, why don't you tell people what you recall of who Jeannie Ives? Jenny
Ives was, I think she was in the state Senate, and she ran for governor when Bruce Rauner was running for his second term. And she was critical of the way that he operated as a Republican because it wasn't very Republican. And she ran on essentially a platform of sticking to the Republican principles. And it rang very, very well with a lot of people. And she almost was successful in defeating Rauner. I wish he was, because Rauner, as we know, he didn't have the legs to beat Pritzker in the general election. I think Jeannie Ives would have. But unfortunately, that's not the way it fell out. So Jeannie Ives holds a huge amount of support and sway in the Republican electorate even today.
Well, she claims, and I'll point this out as well, that if you watch the whole video, and I think we'll pull ahead, I'm going to take this video when I'm done and post it up on Rebuild's Telegram channel. So please make sure to go to that as well. That's t.me/Rebuild Illinois chat. And but she alludes to the fact that she thinks that that wasn't an up and up election as well. That really there was some big money interest that basically got Rauner in, and she has some insights on that. I'm gonna go ahead and run the third clip that we have from this, and then we can move on to our B segment. But this is a little long. Stick with me. This gets really, really meaty here. So take a listen.
There are candidates in this race with law degrees that could have litigated Pritzker's lockdown orders, but they didn't. One of them, Richard Irving, mayor of Aurora, the second largest city in the state, had a bully pulpit to do so, and instead, Irvin praised Pritzker's lockdowns and threatened his local businesses if they violated Pritzker's orders. Darren is the only conservative reformer in this race with a record to stand on. No one else challenged the governor's authority to alone make all the decisions that impacted schools, churches, and businesses in Illinois. In May 2020, only Darren Bailey stood his ground against yet another one of Governor Pritzker's 30-day extensions of emergency rules. Others could have stood with Bailey, but they didn't. The only reason children are unmasked today in school is because Darren challenged the governor's illegal mask mandate, and he found Tom DeVore to take the case along with him.
Interesting point.
Here's an important part of that story that should inform Republican voters in this primary race. In May of 2020, the state legislature had no choice but to vote in person to pass a budget and tidy up unfinished business that got stalled when the 2 weeks to slow the curve lockdown began. By this time, Governor Pritzker was on his second or third 30-day emergency order and mask mandate. Knowing that the governor's authority to universally continue to violate due process and common sense, and that his order was most likely unconstitutional, Darren Bailey decided to challenge the mask mandate when session began. After roll call, Republicans called for a caucus meeting to discuss the mask situation. In that meeting, Avery Bourne, Richard Irvin's running mate, hysterically yelled at Darren to just put on your blanking mask. Wow. Now she's running with Irving, and they both are pretending that they stood up to the governor on COVID rules when the opposite is true. In that regard, Republican voters need to be warned.
I got to back that up.
Mask.
I didn't know that happened. Did you know about that, Ben?
What, that she told him to put on his mask?
Yeah. I hadn't heard that story.
I didn't know it happened at the time. I knew he got removed from the floor.
I didn't know it was her.
Yeah, I didn't know it was her either. Who said that to him?
So this is Richard Irving's running mate. I'm going to play that back one more time. Here we go.
That's a hurt. Yeah,
that's going to come back and bite him in the ass for sure.
Yeah, when they say that they're all about liberty, etc. Yeah. Well, what about your own actions there?
Recent record within this stuff. So here,
put on your blanking mask. Richard Irvin's running mate hysterically yelled at Darren to just put on your blanking mask.
Wow.
Now she's running with Irving, and they both are pretending that they stood up to the governor on COVID rules when the opposite is true. In that regard, Republican voters need to be warned. The same people who ran Rauner's campaign backed by a $1 billion checkbook are now running the Irving-Bourne race backed by the same $1 billion checkbook.
Wow.
And just like
so, huge statement there, because she was the one up against that checkbook last time, Ben. If you're really looking at that, that's what she is saying in this clip, that basically the big money interest that gave us Rauner is now trying to run Irving. And she was the one up against that money interest last time. So that's some pretty intimate knowledge.
Yeah. So she knows more than most when it comes to that.
Yeah. So I can understand why she came out of the woodwork and made a big endorsement on this one. Like, let me at him. It makes a lot of sense. So
those political hacks lied about me in 2018. They are lying about Darren Bailey in 2022. In 2018, they are lying about Darren backed by the same $1 billion checkbook. And just like those political hacks lied about me in 2018, they are lying about Darren Bailey in 2022. The truth is, Richard Irving and Avery Bourne just may be both Madigan and Pritzker's favorite Republicans.
Ooh, bro. You can't come back from that one easy. I think that is That's probably the best endorsement I have ever seen.
And that got wide coverage.
Well, we're going to make sure it gets out there a little more too.
Sure.
Now, don't get me wrong. If Richard Irving wants to come on here and tell us what, give us an excuse on that, I'll take it.
Sure.
But I don't think he's going to want to play on this ball field.
So this brings up, a good point. And here's where Irvin is kind of putting himself. It's not so much. It goes right on line with the attack ads. Is he wasn't careful about what he attacked Darren Bailey on, or whether or not he really should have. I'm only guessing he felt that he had no other option but to try to whittle away that support that Darren Bailey has in order to do that. But when it comes time to the primary, he's created a situation where either he backs Darren Bailey as the eventual winner,
right,
or he's going to, let's say that Irvin somehow wins the primary. He's made some people very angry, and they are not going to come out for him. They will not vote for him, and that may cost him the election in the general. So that's a position, and that's a risk that everybody runs with when they run these kinds of ads, is that they put themselves in this position. And they've also, in this case, you look at the attack ads and the facts on the street, and Irvin has kind of backed himself into corner a little bit when it comes to saying that he's for the people and he fought the governor, et cetera, et cetera.
It's his own record.
Like
backing him into the corner. Yeah. It's his own record running him into the corner. It's not anything anyone's saying against him.
I mean, at least if he didn't attack Darren Bailey on those issues.
I don't even think this is retaliatory.
Yeah,
I think they happened within like 48 hours of each other.
Yeah. Yeah, well, but I'm saying at least if he didn't attack Darren Bailey on those issues, he wouldn't have put himself in a position where he has to defend himself against it. And that's kind of the point I'm getting at, is that's why it's always risky to run attack ads, especially in a primary, is because you know what? The election isn't over after you win. You still got to win the general, and you've given your opponent in the general a lot of ammunition against you.
Right. Well, we are only right now 247 days until the general election right now. Guess how many days we have left till the primary? Can you guess it? How close can you get without looking?
Me?
Yeah.
Today's the 7th, I think. So it'd be 90 plus 21 or 111, give or take.
Yeah. I think we are at, let's see here. I think we're at 114 days, according to our calculation.
I'm close.
Very close. So I think that's 16 weeks away from the primaries. So let the mudslinging begin, I guess. I hope that they don't cannibalize each other.
Honestly, for folks, and this is not something that I really talked about. We haven't talked about communications and campaigns, and I'm not certain that we would cover that topic. But in general, when you're running an election campaign against other people of the same party, you need to be very careful in what you say, because those people don't generally go away after an election. They're still around. And so, you certainly need to project how and why you're the better candidate and how you'll do a better job in that position. But you need to find a way to do so in a way that doesn't alienate that other person or make them sound like the bad, like this bad, decrepit, old.
It's gonna come back and haunt you if you fling mud like that. And
it is, because again, the support that you need down the road, And especially, these other candidates, you want them at the end of the day to say, you know what, I support that guy.
I'm
I
going to say
didn't
one
win.
thing though. I am all for
Yeah.
outing rhinos.
Oh,
I'm
sure.
all for it. I don't
Sure.
even put that in the mudslinging category. That's like,
But you can do that without getting, really negative. What you do
no,
is
I have to
you
just bring up their
hammer
record if they're a
home,
rhino.
right? You need to focus on the differences, and sometimes it's enough to state those differences. Hey, this person believes that the FOID card is a good thing, and I believe that the FOID card needs to go away and we should be constitutional carry. I just outed him as
Now,
a rhino without having to get negative on it. I just showed the difference. So that's how you would handle it in that kind of situation.
and it isn't all sunshine and roses with that slate, if you want to call the Bailey slate a slate when you talk about DeVore running for Attorney General. I mean, I have my own preference for Attorney General. I'm a big Shostokis fan all the way around, as you are, I'm sure, as well.
Yeah,
But I don't think that DeVore is bad at his job. I think I'm glad he got paid to do it.
It took me a while to put DeVore together with. He was the lawyer that Bailey hired.
Yep.
To fight the case. Well,
yeah, it's like,
group
was it really a win?
It
Was it really? Was it really? It's kind of a win.
No, it was, but the school that my kids go to hired him to represent them against the governor, and I was underwhelmed with DeVore's performance in the courtroom during that.
Well, and here's the other part. It's not like he's volunteering his services.
No.
He got paid both times. All three times,
yeah.
however many times. I mean, it's a job. I mean, I'm not putting him down as some like volunteer gladiator. He didn't go out there and do it for no cash down. I'm sure he got paid win or lose or indifferent. Mm-hmm. So whatever we got, you got what you paid for. So I don't know. I don't mean to slam him. I'm thankful that he's got the balls to make the fights that he's made, and I would hope that he would have the balls to stand up for what's right should he get elected. But there's a few candidates that would do that. Sorry, it's guy talk. We're here today. We're going to talk about who's got the cojones to do the job.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we may have to support him in the general election, though. Keep that in
I
mind.
know. So, but there are some rumblings in. I don't know. Do I share the little text thing I found on DeVore? Do we talk about that on the election? No, we're going to skip it. We got something in our back pocket. We may bring it out later.
Because, at the end of the day, we want to be able to interview DeVore and have that go well. And we want to give the voters the best possible look.
Yeah, I'm doing my best to stay like neutral so that we get to talk to people. I'm not trying to alienate anyone. Honestly,
yes.
If Irving wants to get on here.
I think we and I both know people running in this election. They're people that, quite frankly, I would rather not see them run unless nobody else was running. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to mention their names. I'm going to say that I'd rather have that person run than, a very leftist Democrat run.
Exactly. Yeah. So run, Forrest, run. I don't have that clip.
Yeah. Run, Forrest.
So I think that's plenty of time. We've spent a few minutes on the news. So I think in the next segment, I'm going to hand it over to you, Ben. You've got some interesting things to share with us.
Let me go ahead and pull it up here.
Yes, that's awesome.
Man.
You need to go back to that slide.
Yeah, hold on, folks.
Okay,
so we're going to be talking here about political campaign structure, and this is going to apply whether it's at the federal or state level or even at the local campaign level. And the information that I'm going to give to you here is essentially, it's just for that. It's a starting place for you to think of what you want to add to your campaign. Understand that at the end of the day, there is no right solution for what a campaign looks like. Each and every one looks a little bit different. Okay, so what I'm going to show you here is, like, if you have an unlimited funds, this is what it might look like. So, having said that, let's get into this. So, in a perfect world, we would have, as you see up there, the structure, which may be hard to read, and I apologize for that. But one thing I should note right here is the candidate is off to the side, okay? Why is that? Well, we'll get to that. But I've highlighted some in red, a few in green, and the rest in blue. There's a separate structure over here that's in purple, okay? So anytime you run a campaign, it's important to try to build a campaign structure, whether it be from all volunteers, or if you can hire a paid staff, even better. But it's important that you never try to do this all by your lonesome. The only time that may pay off is at a very local level. If you're running for school board, you might be able to do it. But once you get beyond that, like say you get to county board or something like that, it's just so much that you need to do that it's hard to really do it well all by yourself. Okay, so you would have a campaign staff, and that's why a campaign staff exists. And I've listed a couple that are a must in there, and those are the ones that are in red. Give me 1 second. I should have done this before. I should have had it up so I could see the whole thing myself. But the ones in red are.
I can zoom in and do a little highlighting for you as you talk.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. Okay, so the as you see at the top, the campaign managers is the first one that you want. Okay, if you can get anybody, you want to get a campaign manager, and this is somebody who's going to, failing all else, they're going to help you with the different aspects of a campaign. Hopefully, this is somebody that has some experience in it, in campaign management specifically. But if you can't do that, then maybe it's somebody who has run their own campaign, which is, so somebody who's run their own campaign, could possibly stand in as a campaign manager. I had a trained campaign manager who worked for peanuts, because that's about what I made for donations on my campaign. But that position is pretty vital to running a campaign with.
Hey.
No, not wrong time. So sorry. So the next is the treasurer. Okay.
Question.
Yes.
Question. On the campaign manager, what do you look for in a campaign manager when you were looking for a campaign manager?
Experience.
Okay, and like, what type of experience? How can you expand on that? Like, if you're going to run, what kind would they have to have run a campaign before, or general business experience?
You want them to know what they're doing on the campaign. So
okay,
maybe
so they have to
don't
have been
have
involved.
Experience, but they have training. Okay, and as long as they have significant, enough training, and they've helped with campaigns before. If they've never helped or volunteered on a campaign, they're just not going to know everything that they have to do for that campaign.
So not necessarily campaign manager experience, but at least have gone through a couple different elections and different roles, somebody who's been on the ground, somebody who's maybe done 3 or 4 different things and go, well, I know what I would expect or what I've seen other campaign managers do, but definitely campaign election experience, not just general experience.
I would still ask them to go to training then.
Okay. Cool. Are there training resources for people to be?
Oh yeah.
campaigning?
The Leadership Institute out in Alexandria, Virginia, leadership, what is it? Leadershipinstitute.org, I think, or li.org, is a great organization that provide that kind of training, and they'll actually come through the state, if we request and we get enough people interested in attending a campaign manager school, they'll come out to the state. And that's run by Morton Blackwell, believe it or not.
Wow.
So that's a Leadership Institute. There are others out there as well that will run schools.
I'm trying to remember. Did the Heritage Foundation have one at one time, I think?
Who?
Didn't the Heritage Foundation have one at one time as well? I'm trying to think who else I've seen that's run them.
I don't know that the Heritage Foundation has.
Okay. Yeah, but there's a lot of resources. We'll try and gather what we can and put them in links, put them on the website. But people are interested in possibly filling these types of roles, and you haven't done it before. It's just something that popped into my mind. Like, well, how did you find yours? And what qualifications did that person give you? That type of stuff.
Sure.
So anyway, I'll let you move on to the next one.
Okay, so the next one is treasurer, and I have slides on these on the top 4 here, but the treasurer is a must. And understand this, that you cannot have the campaign manager or the candidate take care of the funds. It has to be the treasurer. You absolutely want a treasurer to do that. So the third person, almost second, really would be a treasurer. Okay. Back up on that list, and I'll go through the individual slides in a minute. You need an advisory committee, and these are people who are going to tell you, help you understand what the issues are, what you need to pay attention to, and who you need to talk to, things like that. So again, more info on that, right? And we'll get to that here in a minute. I just want to kind of go through these. Legal advisor is, you need somebody. You don't have to hire a legal advisor. This, normally in a party structure, there's a lawyer somewhere in that realm who can be the legal advisor for your campaign. You don't necessarily have to turn to them much, but you do need somebody there that you can answer legal questions and make sure that you're submitting, for example, the paperwork that you need to. Down the list, a little bit further down, we have, just on the left, you see a communications director. Again, in a perfect world, unlimited budget, one of the primary things your campaign does is communications. So you need somebody to do that. And you see below that, I put social media, and I put it there specifically to highlight the fact that campaigns these days, if you want a successful campaign, you have got to be on social media. Even old farts like myself are on social media.
Yeah. I mean, that to be completely honest, Ben, that's why we met in the first place, is all trying to figure out who's going to handle the social media stuff under your campaign director. That was the meeting. By the way, you are a little stalled, so I'm going to wait for you to kind of spool back up on your internet. Are you back with me?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm back with you.
Good.
Okay, so your social media, this could be,
what we're doing right now.
20-year-old kid.
Yeah, and now unfortunately,
more in touch with social media than you are. That's the person you want to take care of that, and you want.
And I'd like to interject. Social media now encompasses video. It encompasses what we're doing right now.
Sure.
So and
before, it used to be so
to.
expensive to do TV ads, and now you can get a camera, get somebody with some skills, produce your own commercial, and put it out there on the internet, and it's so much cheaper. Then, of course, a press secretary. The green is I would say the blue are your tertiary people who you would get. The green are those who are your secondary. So, but of the top 5, the fundraising director is crucial. Can you
Okay,
do
so
a
I'm just recognizing you got 5 here.
Yep.
For these is your top 5 people.
Top 5. Now,
Yeah.
the only reason that the fundraising director is not in red is because is it required? Not necessarily. But if you really want to be able to reach far and wide with your fundraising efforts, you need this guy. If you can find one, if you can find some business person or somebody with good connections to get interested in your campaign and step up as your fundraising director, they're going to be the ones to introduce you to people who can give.
I have a question for you on that too.
Yes.
At what
Okay.
stage for each of these people would you say you need to start to secure this team? Is this like well before you have ballot access? Is it after you've got ballot access, or up until the primaries? How soon do you have to fill these roles?
Yesterday.
Of course, it's yesterday. Ideally,
Whenever,
they're all waiting in your
whenever
garage.
the Marine Corps, they always ask, when do you want this done? The answer is always yesterday. Okay, so look, if you can somehow figure this out before you announce, you get these people in place before you announce. That is the best scenario. Often it doesn't happen that way.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Often a lot of people they'll flush out their campaign as they go through. Maybe they get through the primaries before they finally get a funding director. Okay. So it depends, but you want to get at least, those directors, you want them in place at least, hopefully, well before the primaries, if you can't secure them even before you announce. Okay.
So I didn't mean to derail you. I'm just curious if that was part of your presentation to talk about timing on that.
That's a good question. That really is. Okay. And again, the truth of the matter is there's no such thing as a perfect world unless you're running for president or you're running for re-election in the U.S. Senate, or maybe
you already have a staff, or you already have a team. Those are the perfect world scenarios. But most of you people that are running for office, you're running for the first time. This is all new information.
Yeah, trust me. When you're running for re-election and you have a war chest to run on, you're going to be able to get all these people right away. Okay.
And when you say road chest, you talked about that with campaign finance before. If you have funds that are left over, they can only be spent on that election process. Yeah. So that's those funds carry over to the next election for incumbency.
And people who run for office usually hold some back just for that purpose. Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
If they're smart. So then, of course, fundraising committees and all that under the fundraising director. Field director is going to be the one who is, this is where the rubber meets the road out on the street. You need this guy to get out there. Oftentimes it's the campaign manager who's doing this role.
He's doing both. So it's double duty here.
Yeah. So, field organizers are going to help. And those are, all the different areas.
Or your campaign manager is all these.
Yeah. To some level that is absolutely true. So, but then, you definitely want somebody there who's going to be your field organizer, somebody who's going to, coordinate the volunteers, because the candidate is the last person who should do that. Not that the candidate doesn't care about volunteers. We absolutely love them, but the candidate's got other things to take care of. If the candidate is handling volunteers, it usually goes badly. I'll just say that out loud. Okay. If the candidate is the one who is handling volunteers, it usually goes badly. That's been my experience running myself and trying to help other people volunteering for their campaign is just kind of fall off the wayside. Not that you want that to happen, but there's so many pressures on the candidate that the staff is there for to try to soak up. And in a perfect world, yeah, this is all in place, but the truth of the matter is sometimes the candidate is also doing a lot of this.
Sure.
Okay, so I'll talk about outside allies at the end. Let's go through each of the separate slides then.
Okay, so that's this section. This is your outside.
Yeah, I'll talk about that last. So
right. Let's get into the slides. Here we go. So we'll start here.
Yeah. So as you see, as you see there, the campaign manager. You can think of him as the CEO of the campaign. The one who is essentially running everything. They handle everybody else. And they even handle the candidate at times. The candidate, and this is the important part of choosing a good campaign manager, okay? Because you as the candidate are going to depend on what they do or don't do to help your campaign succeed, okay? So, and it's important for a candidate, this is number one, because the candidate can't do everything, and the candidate needs somebody else who is going to be running the day-to-day things while the candidate is talking to people, asking for donations, going to events, asking for donations, making statements, asking for donations.
You're saying that every other time, I think, on purpose.
Yeah, so the campaign manager is the one who really picks up a lot of that, and then like you said, the campaign manager becomes responsible for filling in any of the gaps for anything that the organization lacks. Yeah.
And so when we come back to this, when we talk about the campaign manager, we talk about the treasurer, we talk about these like generals in your perfect world team.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that the people that are running as your legal advisor, as your treasurer, as your maybe not so much the advisory committee, but your communications director as well. These are all probably going to become paid positions. You're going to try and compensate them some way. These are the least likely to be volunteers. Am I correct in that assessment?
That's correct.
You can get lucky and get all these things volunteered, or as in donations in kind or gratis, but these are the more executive roles. Would you say?
You would, maybe you make deals with them. Hey,
right.
You help me and this is the deal I made with my campaign manager. You help me get elected, and you're my chief of staff.
Okay.
And so he was willing to work toward that investment, and that's what it was for him. It was an investment because he understood that at the end of the day, if I got elected, he had a job.
Right. So, I mean, you have different people you would be hiring should you get into most of these positions.
Yeah. In some cases now, obviously there's a cost for legal advice. Mm-hmm. I did not have to pay any of that. The party absorbed all that cost on my behalf.
Interesting.
So that was good. The treasurer may or may not be paid at some point. If you're pulling in a lot of funds,
right.
But sure that the treasurer is being paid, because that becomes an accountability issue.
We'll revisit this section when you get through all your other slides. I would like to know. I'll save it towards the end, but I would like to talk about where volunteers fit in this picture and when you might not be in volunteer land, that type of stuff. So anyway, we'll get you back to this. So
the only big five, by the way, the only one that wouldn't be paid is your fundraising director.
Right. Understood. And then there's some that you can't get around paying sometimes, like when it comes to media production, that's hard to get for free.
It's very hard to get for free.
I know, because that's what I do. That's why we built this organization, is to try and spread the love as much as we possibly can.
Okay, so let's pull up the treasurer. Okay.
Right. You got it.
Okay, so the treasurer is the one that, outside of the lawyer, has the most compliance responsibilities, or even more than the lawyer. What the lawyer can be held legally responsible for any advice that they give, but the treasurer in this case is the one who is making sure that all the legal requirements in terms of reporting are done on time and correctly, and so they're a big part of your campaign. If you're lucky and you get somebody to volunteer, that's great, because maybe you got a small time campaign, but the larger the campaign gets, the more time that position is going to take, and this is going to end up being a paid position at some point. Understand that you don't want just anybody doing this. It has to be somebody who has the knowledge of keeping track of funds, both receipts and expenditures. Okay. And so somebody who's well organized and stays on top of the legal requirements, that's what it takes. Does it take a CPA? Absolutely not. But it does take somebody who, usually somebody with a college degree, hopefully, that they have enough wherewithal to kind of follow along the requirements. And you see they have it laid out there. Like I said, it's recommended the treasurer have a degree, hopefully in accounting practices, if you expect to pull in a lot of money. It's important that every cent be spent and accounted for. And this is a very important note, the treasurer cannot, and I repeat, cannot be the candidate, and it cannot be the campaign manager. You need a third party. Okay. Because of the requirements for, if you will, the certification of funds, if you will. And also then from the candidate and campaign manager side, if something goes wrong, the treasurer is the one who takes the fall.
Wow. So not a small position by any stretch of the imagination.
No, it's a very important position. And there have been treasurers I've heard of that said, they saved their candidate by saying, no, I messed that up, not the candidate. It was my fault. And they, obviously they got fired, but
wow.
The candidate was very,
so they kind of act as a bit of, they act as a bit of a firewall between the candidates.
Yeah, they're a bit of a firewall in that case. So, I mean, it's a very important position. It cannot be overlooked.
Okay.
So let's go to the next one. The advisory committee, again, if you caught what I was saying before, is these aren't people who work for your campaign. These are people who are there to help with the direction of your campaign. They don't answer to the campaign manager. They're
right.
kind of an aside, but they are loosely attached to the campaign. That's why I still put them there. Okay. You would want them to meet periodically and to keep you on track.
You want them to know each other.
Well, to know each other, and that you also want them all to be in agreement.
Yeah, sure.
So that they aren't having the candidate work it off.
How big is your advisory committee? I mean, minimum, maximum? Is there a target size?
Gosh, what does the Bible say about advisors?
Yeah, I don't know. Fill me in. I know there were 12 apostles. That's about it.
Yeah, it's something about blessed is the ruler who has many advisors. But you obviously you have to keep it small enough that it's workable. Okay. If you get 20 people on your advisory committee, that's probably way too large.
Sure.
So I would say I'd probably cap it at 10.
Okay.
And that isn't because other community members aren't important. It's because of what's manageable.
Okay.
I mean, that's what you need them to be able to arrive at a conclusion. And the more people you put into a room,
Yeah,
the less
it's
chance
almost
you
like
have at arriving at a conclusion.
you would say it's similar to like if you're trying to put together a board for an organization or a business, you want it to be enough that that you get a diverse amount
Mhm.
of advice, yet small enough that that they don't encumber each other. Lean and mean is as we like to say it. So I would assume what would be the since we're on the
So
pretense of a
here's
perfect world, 5 people, 6 people, or does it depend on the candidate?
it depends on the candidate and the area in which they're running.
Okay.
Okay, if you're running up in Maine where they're probably 90% white, you probably don't have to worry about any ethnic minority leaders on your board. But down here in Joliet, you better have
Well, what
a
did someone say?
Latino community leader. You better have a Black community leader on
Someone
that.
said there's
You
a
better
meme.
have
I wish I could pull it up.
yeah.
But it's like it's for church groups and they have
Yeah.
banners that have like Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and it's 3 banners that go WTF, and it says you want to make sure that you always have a millennial on your team, just to make sure you don't make those kind of mistakes and put banners out that say WTF.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Well, that would be a good
you
thing.
want
I mean,
schools of thought involved,
here's the question: who do you want to reach?
right? You want those
Okay,
to be represented. They're almost like a focus group for you, right?
right, exactly. So I'm running. If I were to run here near Joliet, I would need a representative of the Latin community on my advisory committee.
You'd
And I
want
sought
people
them
from the
out.
community. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And so you definitely want somebody who's involved in politics before. Okay, if you're close enough to the county chair, get them involved. County chair is really busy though, so maybe somebody else.
Sure.
Somebody from the business community for sure. Then like I said, listing ethnic communities, you want them involved, and so you want these.
You're going to be fighting over certain people in like that are working like that are like I remember like George Pearson in Will County. How many committees was he a part of? I mean, the dude had a full schedule.
I felt sorry for him every time I sent him a text. He's like, I really hate to bother you, but he's like, no, I'm here for you. He's a very good county chair. I'm so sad to hear he's going to be leaving that position, but
no.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gossip for later. But oh my gosh, that's news to
Yeah,
me.
well, I think he's retiring and moving down to Texas is what it is, or he's accepted a job down in Texas or something like that.
Man, we can't keep bleeding conservatives like this.
Well, it's but it's a choice that he made in good faith, and
sure.
That just means the rest of us have to step up. But for those who don't know, George Pearson, the Will County Republican chair, he's done a phenomenal job.
Amazing. Big shoes to fill.
Around. Yeah.
Big shoes to fill. You have to smoke cigars.
Our party went from something that was just drifting along to a very vibrant and well-engaged party that, we're still expanding, but it has a lot to do with George's leadership. So anyway, so these are the type of people that you want on that advisory committee is, the people who are going to help you with the community.
Sure.
That's who you want. Okay.
So moving on to the next piece.
Okay, so that's the legal advisor is the next one. Again, we talked about this, and I sort of hit all these points. You want to make sure that you have legal counsel review submissions before you turn them in, if you can. I'd say 95% of the time you definitely do. If it's a mundane report, there's no big surprises on it. Maybe not, but for example. The Senate Republican Committee legal team looked at all of my submissions for my petitions to ensure They were bulletproof and couldn't be challenged.
I mean, I'm watching Shestokas go through his own petitions right now, and I mean, at least he has himself. You know, he's definitely combing through these sheets right now.
Well, he knows, yeah, he knows what he's doing. But if he's smart, he's still going to get somebody else to look at him. You know, that's something a lawyer would tell you: never represent yourself, even if you're a lawyer.
Right.
But so that's, you know, essentially a lawyer, and you don't want just any lawyer. You don't go grab yourself some criminal defense lawyer.
Right.
And
Somebody
say,
who has
"Please
experience at this process.
Yeah, right. Just like there are specialized lawyers for everything else, real estate law, criminal law, etc. There are lawyers who are very well versed in election law. Though that's who you want to reach out to. And again, start by asking your party chairman who's available. They'll be able to recommend people to you. Okay.
Cool.
Next one, fundraising director. Now, I told you before, this is the fifth, and this is the one that is one that wouldn't be paid, of course, because that's kind of counter to their purpose of existence in the first place.
Right. They're not there to look like skimming.
Right.
Of the donations.
Your fundraising director, in fact, should be perhaps one of your biggest, if not the biggest, donor to your campaign.
Interesting.
You want somebody, who Mr.
leads by example.
Right. You want Mr. Moneybags to be your fundraising director. Why?
Oh, I'll match your contribution or whatever. Yeah.
Connections. Right. So they have this big Rolodex of people to call. Well, I know Joe Schmo, who owns 5 hotels, who's interested.
I know who I would use. I'm not going to state names, but I already know whose Rolodex I'd want to tap into.
You call. Hey, we'll talk after the show. But you know, hey, Joe Schmo, who owns 5 hotels, I'm going to give him a call. If you called him, he might give you 1,000. I'll get the max out of him for you. So that's the guy you want as your fundraising director. That's who you want, and they're going to do things. And he's going to have fundraising committees, plural. Like usually one in each community, who are there to plan fundraising events. They're going to make sure that fundraising events continue to happen on a regular basis, because one of the biggest things that you need in a campaign, money.
Yep.
And in fact, you can expect to spend about $5 per vote that you need to win.
And by the way, I've seen people jump in and jump out. I want to make sure, if you're just joining us right now, we are in the middle of kind of going over with Ben the dream team, so to speak, in an ideal world of what your political campaign structure should be. So we've covered, I think, everything in the top of this list right now, and we are currently going over your fundraising director. And so I just to reset the room, I want to make sure that people understand this is I know this is a long slog, but I expect this to be one of the most watched videos we put out based off of what people are doing right now at this very moment.
Well, the good news is we're kind of getting toward the end here. So
I hope not. I got more questions. I could drag this thing out for an hour. I love this topic. This is a fantastic chart.
So understand that that's who you want as your fundraiser. Your fundraising directors. You want somebody who has those connections, who can reach out and introduce you to and help you get those donations. Okay. Because like I said, a campaign runs on donations. It really needs it, because you're spending a lot of money per vote. If you would think, oh, just $1, no, at least, at the very minimum, $5 per vote. That's right. Typically what it costs these days. So we go to the next slide there. Sure. We get back to in a perfect world, and that's where we look at those purples. And there are things outside of the organizations we haven't really talked about that are still there. They're not part of your organization, but think of them as your allies. Okay, interest groups, for example. If you're a Second Amendment supporter as a candidate, why in the world would you not reach out to Second Amendment interest groups? Okay. they're naturally going to be a good fit for you, and they are already operating and already communicating with a large field of individuals who are their membership. It just makes good sense to reach out to them and say, hey, please, when you communicate, do this. Or, hey, better yet, do you think you can help me run a fundraiser?
Right.
Because, hey, guess what? I'm the one you want in office to make the right votes to either block bad stuff or get good stuff passed. In
So
fact,
allies being the key word. People who are interested in the points you run on your campaign. Actually, it should be almost automatic to find out which interest groups would fit within your campaign after you've set up your strategy.
a lot of people don't think about it.
It's
Believe it
interesting.
or not. So, but take time, look in the state for interest groups that might fit your, fit your style and what, your priorities. Okay. Go to IllinoisSunshine.org and look up the groups that are there with PACs. Reach out to those PACs, and try to, do your best to make that happen. Of course, don't forget your party organization. Okay, a lot of people, especially if they're like running for school board, they don't think to do that because school board is a nonpartisan. No, man, reach out to your party and try to get help from them as much as possible. So you can't run as a Republican for school board. You can still get Republican volunteers to help you.
Right.
Okay, so don't overlook the party when running for office, especially, the higher up you go. And we talked about this in previous episodes. Illinois Republican Party couldn't really do a whole lot for candidates, us challengers.
Yeah, no, it's brutal.
But they're still going to do everything they can for you, within bounds.
I mean, when I saw that on there, I'm like, well, right now, I don't know if we would
they provided all my legal needs. That could have been thousands of dollars out my campaign that they paid for.
Sure.
And if they can, they will. Also, then other organizations, civic organizations that may not be necessarily tied to politics are still good places to go to. I mean, Little League, high school sporting events. PTO,
your American Legion, right? Or your Moose Lodge, or your
reach out to churches. Now, churches can't have you come. They can't invite you up in front of. At least they're not supposed to invite you up in front of their congregation and say, "You all need to vote for this person." They can't do that. But there's nothing wrong with you paying a visit. And maybe, you pay a visit to the church and maybe they recognize your presence there, that goes a long way.
What you're bringing up is they can, if they're not a 501c3. If they're a 501c3, they can get them in some hot water. And most churches are.
It depends on how they handle it. It really does. That thing about, 501c3 and not getting involved, they can't actively campaign for you. That's what they can't do. That doesn't mean they can't. It doesn't mean that you can't be. Like I said, visit the church or something like that. That's certainly in the realms of what's allowed. Okay. Of course, other politicians, either previous or current politicians, you want to try to leverage them as much as possible to give you advice of what works for them. They certainly will offer you their 2 cents when you ask. They may not if you don't, so make sure you do. Right. Now, so understand. So those are like your allies that you really want to go to. So probably the biggest question, like I said, in a perfect world, you would have all that, but is it really necessary? It kind of depends. It really does. Like I said, in the small elections, you may get away with not having a campaign staff. Okay. But once you start getting more involved, you have many precincts to worry about. It's very difficult to run a campaign without people there backing you up, and it's darn near impossible at the state level. Okay,
But you're
if
not
you
doing
think,
this yourself is the biggest key here. This is not something you can do with one or two people. You need a team behind you.
as many as you can get. So maybe you don't fill out the whole chart. I did not. Okay, I still got the most votes. I still got the most votes in history for the Republicans in the Senate seat for which I ran, and I didn't have all of that. Okay, I barely had half of that.
Right.
So understand that's just how it happens. And so, but as you reach
state,
or you definitely just keep in mind that's the ideal that you're shooting for. So state campaign, as many of those as you can get as possible.
You want to fill that slate, yeah.
And
because you're going to end up probably taking them with you if you get elected.
Yeah, understand this as a candidate, and the whole reason behind this is you cannot do it all. Okay, I guarantee if you're doing any of this that we talked about, any of those positions, there's something you're ignoring. You're dependent upon your staff to continually feed you and keep you busy, because when they're keeping you busy on the right things, the things that need your attention, versus things that if you give them attention, you're losing time from focusing on the things that you as a candidate really need to focus on.
Sure.
Okay. So one more slide there.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's the last slide. That's slide 9.
Oh no. Okay. So let me.
What's slide 10? Let me pull it up. I may have
well,
it here.
No, I got it. Yeah. I'm just going to add it to the screen there.
Okay, cool.
Can you blow that up?
Looking for it.
No, it was off of my share. Okay, well, okay, I'll just tell you what they are. So go ahead and close that out. Okay, so a couple questions that I had. So, we already talked about this. Do you have to hire people?
Well, and like I said, I would love to go over that chart with you and talk about like what you would do in like from a small campaign to a larger campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you looking for first? Obviously, you have your top 5 that you have enumerated there, but how do you prioritize them?
Yeah. So, you may convince people to start as volunteers. There are some of you just cannot handle.
What are absolute volunteers here? Let me just ask that question. So, for instance, like you researchers, I'm assuming you want as many volunteer researchers.
Volunteers.
Right. Field organizers. Obviously, volunteers are volunteers. But what we mean by that are people going out and getting signatures. If you need them, or sign distribution and collection and materials, that's what we mean by volunteers, right?
All of that. Your events, now your scheduler might be a part-time paid position.
Okay, so maybe paid.
Maybe. It depends on the size of the campaign. It really does. Field director at some point would be,
compensated one way or another.
Either, maybe that's your spouse,
Yeah. You're making sure that they're flushing beer or whatever. Yeah, you owe a debt to your field director. You figure that out.
Your fundraising section there, of course, they're all volunteer, and that's the way they should be.
So really, these are probably your least likely in this section to be not volunteer.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Or to be least likely to be volunteer. Far left there, you're talking, your press secretary. Your press secretary might be a volunteer, but social media and communications director are most likely going to be paid.
Yep.
Now, your social media director, fortunately, like I said, that's someone.
There's a lot of different strategies there. You might be good at it as a candidate, but the problem is just like you said earlier, you don't want to get caught in that situation where you're doing too much, because then you're missing something else. You don't want, even if it's what you're good at. If I were to run, I would find someone else to try and do my video and media, even though that's my forte. I would try and push that off.
Yeah,
Right?
it comes to a point where there are other things that are of higher value for you to spend your time on. So,
Sure.
like I said, you could do it, but you would probably be so frustrated with somebody else doing social media. But the fact of the matter is, you as a candidate
Have to find
would
someone you can
be,
trust.
yeah, and just have to run with it, because
Right.
have to let them run with it, because you're a candidate, not a social media person. But
Sure.
the good news is a lot of these people are young, so paying them in peanuts kind of works. But
these
then,
people want experience to be working in other campaigns down the road as well, or they have a
yeah,
desire to do other things in politics. This is all great experience. It's too bad we don't
right.
have other civic organizations that actually encourage, or the kind of work internship style situations, where might be something we need to look into down the road. I know that
Yeah.
Young
Now
Americans for Liberty does a lot.
we're at an hour and a half,
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm out of beer, so let's wrap this up.
Sure. But
So
all of
we
these in
talked about
general,
advisory committees not paid.
so this is
Advisory
volunteer.
committees not paid. Okay.
Okay.
The rest of them, you as you
Probably
can, you
need
want to
to pay,
compensate them.
to compensate
Okay.
these people here.
Yeah.
And your
Okay.
fundraising director is a volunteer.
Now,
We talked about that earlier.
under no circumstances should the candidate ever be paid. Maybe you compensate the candidate for things
Because they're
like,
applying for a job, essentially.
yeah, well,
Their payment comes if they get elected.
it's optics. Yeah, it's optics. It looks horrible if the candidate gets paid. You can reimburse the candidate, like if they have to get a hotel, if they have to buy gas or something like that.
There's expenses.
Right. For expenses, certainly reimburse the candidate, but never, ever, ever pay the candidate. That is just a mistake and a half.
A bit of a faux pas.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we kind of answered then, my last question is, what can a candidate do? And the answer to that is, the less the better. Because of, the
Be
real,
accessible, be available.
yeah, you're supposed to be, meeting people,
Sure.
talking. That's the candidate's main function, is to talk. And
Yeah.
that means knocking on doors. It means getting stuck in front of a camera, and so many more. Talking on the phone, whatever it takes to talk to people to win elections. That's what the candidate does. So the less of that other stuff that the candidate does, the better.
Well, since
Now,
we're running so
kind of
long, since we're running long, I had one question that we were gonna bring up on our D block,
Mhm.
and that is, we got people who are working really hard right now to get all of their petitions put together. They're going to be running down to, like I said, as we started this show, we know that they're going to be running down tomorrow to Springfield. There's going to be a lot of traffic in Springfield of people going down to the Board of Elections and getting all these papers filed. But there's another strategy that I had never heard of, and that is called slating.
Yep.
I have never heard of
So,
this. So I'm
real
you
quick,
had some insight.
slating-
I would love for that's a note for me.
Slating is a secondary option when it comes
What
to
is
getting
slating?
on for the general election. And it's when no candidate for a party has volunteered and collected enough petition signatures to get on the ballot. After the primary election, the party holds a caucus and can elect an individual to be slated as the Republican nominee for that position. And then they'll stand election in the general election. Okay. Essentially, that's it. They have to pass, there are a couple other small criteria that they have to meet. But
the party can basically elect or nominate someone to run for something, whether or not they've got the signatures or not.
Only if the position is vacant from the primary. Okay.
Interesting.
If nobody ran for it during the primary, then they can slate the position after the primary.
Wow. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Talking about optics, you know, who's this Johnny come lately? They haven't talked to any of the public, you know. There are times to do that.
Are there
Certainly,
rules like if you've already tried to get the signatures and couldn't get them, does that disqualify you from slating?
No.
No? Okay. I didn't know.
It just means you can't be on the primary ballot.
Interesting. Okay.
But again, it comes down to optics. Okay. But there are other things that would disqualify you from being slated. And for example, we had that problem in Will County last time where we couldn't get somebody on the ballot for an ungodly, stupid reason. I mean, it wasn't the guy's fault. It was what it was. And I won't mention it because it was such an obscure thing that happened.
We're talking about Eric Wallace. He's running, isn't he? Again?
Yeah, it wasn't Eric Wallace.
No.
Eric Wallace got on the primary ballot. He was challenged. They challenged his petition signatures, and we were able to prove enough of them.
That was awesome.
On the ballot. Yeah,
I'll post a link to that video in our Telegram group for people to watch. That was
you got to be kidding me. Anybody doesn't know, you know, Eric Wallace is a gentleman, and I'm looking forward to being able to interview him.
We get to interview him, right?
Yeah.
He's running.
He was one of the three amigos.
He was the first interview when we did this stuff 2 years ago.
Yeah. So it was Eric Wallace, Tom McCullough, and myself. We were the three amigos, each of us running for a separate state Senate seat. And you talk, did the Democrats challenge Tom? No. Did they challenge me? No. Who did they challenge? The only Black Republican running for state Senate.
It's so crazy. It's so
you want to
crazy.
talk? Yeah, it's like, how hypocritical can you be? You know, oh, we don't want a Black Republican.
Some people don't care about optics, obviously.
yeah. So, but we were able to help him stay on the ballot, and you know, then he received his nomination. Unfortunately, it was a very, very hard district to win.
Right.
Just because it's so full of.
Well, I look forward to his next run. I look forward to getting him in the interview seat.
Absolutely. And
seeing what he does here soon. Ben, thank you for unpacking all of that. That was a ton of information, and I hope that we get this thing circulated so that all those that do want to run in the future recognize how to get the best baseball team available for them. You know,
I would tell anybody who's actually stayed around this far, just understand that experience is the best teacher. Get out there and do it. Okay. If you didn't run this time, get out there and volunteer on a campaign, get the experience you need for, you know, if you decide to run, you're not going to be going at it cold turkey. You're going to have some knowledge of what a campaign kind of looks like, even though you didn't run one yourself.
Right. So reach out to us at rebuildillinois.org. Send an email to us as well. We have, let's see, where's our email address? I have it in here somewhere. rebuildillinois.org@gmail.com. Or find us on Telegram. We do have a pretty vibrant community happening on Telegram right now. And we do have a link tree, which I can pop up for you right up here in the corner. You just scan that with your phone, and you'll get all the community that's actually happening in conservative politics here in Illinois. It's not just our stuff. That actually hopefully is a good resource for you. Make sure to ask us some questions. Find out who you can get involved with. Hopefully, everybody that we interview will become a vibrant member of that community, and you'll find out ways that you can volunteer and help them in their campaign. So join us at that Telegram link, and help us rebuild Illinois. We're working our butt off to make it happen. Ben, thank you for taking the time to make that also clear.
Oh, hey, happy to do so. Okay, we'll see you all next week. Have a wonderful evening.
Take care, guys. We'll see you soon.
night, then well, I'm wide awake. Won't take your brand, I'm not your slave. You serve your God, Lord of the flies. I pity you and you me mine. Lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes. Your bloody mouth unsatisfied. God sees the trap you set for me. He'll not be mocked, I will be free. We will not bend, we will not break. How dare you touch what God gave? We'll never give in, never give up, never back down, never surrender, never surrender.